Hey, good morning, everybody. Welcome to Safe Defend Live. I have the privilege of meeting with the trainer extraordinaire of Safe Defend, Dan Cole, the man, the myth, the legend. He has taught more people about how to take care of themselves in an active shooter event than most of us can ever understand, frankly. And today, he's going to talk about lessons learned through a few events he's seen and what the best practices are for teachers and students and administrators in our schools. Dan, it's great to see you, brother.
Well, thank you for that introduction, Dave. It's an honor and a privilege to be on with you today. I try to avoid these things, as you know. I would rather be on the front end of things than the front end of a camera here. So
I'm with you. I try to avoid these things too, but unfortunately, every Friday I get to do this. So,
well, I appreciate the opportunity because in my role as account manager, I have been given the charge to go out and speak with administrators at a core level. And one of the things I really like to do is bring together some best practice review at the end of each year and pull in after action reviews from some of the most recent events. And when you start seeing patterns that lead to mass casualty events, it's very easy to focus on a few things that can make a big difference. And that's where I feel like most administrators, they're in tune with making the adjustments because they understand when there has been mass casualty events, something broke down in the system.
Yeah, and it's interesting, as we look back at mass casualty events, it seems like the same things are being done wrong, right? It seems like we're making the same mistakes over and over. We're relying on the same old school techniques and tactics to defend the classroom. And I'm looking forward to today's discussion to talk about some different things we do or how we can do the old things better to make sure our students, teachers, and staff are safe.
Well, absolutely. When I'm having these conversations with the administrators, it has to start at the superintendent level and move down because ultimately they're the decision maker for everything that goes on in the district. Larger districts have usually a couple layers of safety professionals. Smaller districts, it might sit squarely on the shoulders of the superintendent. So the interesting thing about this, Dave, is there, and I like to tell people, I have to tell them, there is a difference between will to harm and intent to kill. And if we can help schools focus on preventing that behavior that takes them to that intent to kill, they're so much farther ahead of the game. And when somebody crosses that barrier and does some planning and intends to bring a weapon into the building, what we have to make sure is that that first 15 seconds of violence is responded to accordingly, meaning staff in that immediate area have to be able to execute the school plan, meaning get the campus in that protective stance, alert everybody that there is danger, and notify outside law enforcement and internal safety teams. Because that first 15 seconds of response will determine the next 15 minutes of success or failure.
Yeah, I mean, we talk about time to respond a lot on these discussions, and the reality of it is if you don't have a quick way to respond and notify everybody at once, you're already behind because this is going to be over in 5 minutes.
Right.
This is going to last all day. You got about 15 seconds, right, to
Right.
notify everybody so we can secure the space and reduce that response time for our security providers.
Well, two incidents that come to mind. The Stoneman Douglas High School was just a horrible tragedy on a lot of levels, and the communication fell apart rapidly there. And Covenant Christian in Nashville, Tennessee was a horrible tragedy as well. Both were looked at differently because of the way law enforcement were able to respond. Yep. However, the results were the same for both because they didn't have that internal immediate communication tool. And one thing that really challenged both of those modern buildings was they had an automatic fire alarm system that activated when it detected the smoke from the gunfire. Now, in my best practice, I talk to schools about understanding the benefit of communicating with your local fire response teams and your fire marshals, your safety teams, and ask for permission to put a 30-second to possibly even a 1-minute hold on an immediate evacuation, simply because if you've got people on the second and the third floor far removed from where this incident starts, and you have an automatic system that's activated, these people walk straight into the path of the killer. Yep. And it's amazing to me, a lot of schools have thought this through, but a lot of them have not addressed this just because it seems difficult to have these conversations, but it's not. You just open the conversation up with your local agencies, and you start having a fact-based conversation, and the school boards, safety teams, folks come on board and they understand the importance.
Yeah, I mean, I think in a lot of cases, or in some cases, active shooters have used the fire alarm system to flush the rooms to create more targets. Yes. And we have to think through this, and it's tough because, you know, if you don't have a way to notify everybody we're locking down for an active shooter, and the fire alarm goes off, you think there's a fire, right? You don't know what's going on. It's complete chaos. I can't even imagine the fog and friction that's created by having the fire department and the police department showing up at the same time, one thinking it's an active shooter, one thinking it's a fire, both trying to save the lives of kids. One expects an evacuation and the other expects a way to lock down. I mean, that is just mass chaos.
One of the things that I have helped identify that's a challenge for schools is having any drill that is not announced or narrated. And simply because your fire drills, your weather drills, your intruder or your lockdown drills, each one of them needs to be announced and narrated so it eliminates all confusion. And it used to be the old school is we want our fire alarms to be spontaneous, and we want staff to react to them according to if they're in the cafeteria, if they're in the classroom, if they're in the hallway. Well, they should understand and have gone through those mental exercises to know how to respond. And by taking this and creating an online, or let's say a scripted narrative, and you make an announcement, if the drill's at 10 o'clock, fire, weather, or intruder drill, 5 minutes beforehand, you get on intercom and say, we will be activating the fire alarm system in 5 minutes. This will be a walkthrough exercise. They understand what to expect and they know it's going to go off. One of the things people say is, well, we don't like to have a scripted announced because we might have people that are needing to understand how to respond if they're in the hallway or so forth. Or I had this conversation. If you've got 500 people in your building, you might at any time have 20 to 40 people in the hallways or areas that are not in a classroom. But what are the odds that it's going to be those 40 people in the hallway when an actual event happens? So you're causing a lot of stress and anxiety for everybody if you don't go ahead and do a scripted announced drill across the board. That way, if they do have an activation of the fire alarm system or the intruder system or those things, their heightened awareness is up a notch. They're really thinking things through and they're considering, do I hold in place on this fire drill? What is the protocol? Is the safety team checking this out and then going to make an announcement? So it's all important and needs to be thought through.
Well, I think this is an interesting discussion because I got to play Division I college football. I got the pilot in the Air Force, and everything we did falls in line with what you're saying in our practice and our training, whether it was the airplane or the football field, right?
Right.
Every Friday we'd show up someplace and we'd do a walkthrough of our game plan, and we walk through what's next. And we didn't wear shoulder pads, and we had our helmets on and shorts and cleats, but it was a walkthrough. It was not in a hurry. It was very methodical. This is what we're going to do. This is the next thing we're going to do. Airplane, you get in the simulator. Okay, you're going to have an engine fire on takeoff, right? They tell you in training what you're going to do so you can think through the process. And the stress that you add in the situation where you're not needing to, it limits learning because you don't know what's going to happen, so you're not learning. This is about creating muscle memory, right? When you train to do something in a stressful environment, it's about creating muscle memory. An engine fire on an E3, it was muscle memory. Spinning in a T-37, it was muscle memory. You memorized the boldface, you executed it. When it happened, you did exactly what you were taught to do. You were stressed and your body knew exactly what to do. I think you're a genius for telling schools that, because guess what? Every professional team does it. Every professional pilot does it. Every professional soldier does it. People that are professionals train to that level. So that's some great advice for our schools about announcing it, making it purposeful, methodical, executing it, because muscle memory is muscle memory. And the only way to create muscle memory is by actually thinking through what you're doing and doing it multiple times in a stable, calm
Right.
environment.
Well, mental exercises cannot be understated.
Yep.
I'm glad you brought up the airplane. When we get on a domestic flight to go somewhere, they always tell us where the exits are,
Yep.
what's going to happen if they lose cabin pressure, but they don't put you through a flight crash simulator to understand
Right.
how you should respond. Now, I do agree that there is a second level of training that staff who want to take part in that training could do. They could sign up and take that second level of training. But for our drills and the things that we have going on in general safety, we don't need to impose that stress and anxiety on them.
Well, we're also trying to teach them to slow down and calm down, right? I mean, if you hear gunshots, you're going to be elevated excitement, right? Your blood pressure is going to go up. Granted, it's going to happen to all of us, and you don't know how you're going to react. But if you have thought through stuff, you will step through the process and not even know you're doing it.
Well, and that's another thing that I mentioned. There's a lot of reasons that you might initiate a separate and isolate or an intruder lockdown situation that don't involve somebody walking through the building with a long gun.
Yep.
And if you train for those situations that could be brought under control in the first 30, 45 seconds, and you know how to get everybody off that heightened awareness down to a situation that's control, then people don't fear that every time there is an activation of the separate and isolate or the lockdown system, that they're fearing the worst.
Right.
So in the fire business, when we have a commercial structure alarm, we order big. We roll, the chief, we roll a couple battalions, we roll everything we can, because we don't know what we have until the first radioed unit, then we start backing things down. I talk about when schools are training staff, understand the difference between non-emergency, minor emergencies, and threat with potential major emergencies, and how to manage each situation. Things that can be de-escalated, de-escalate them. Manage that just like you would. But understand if there is a weapon involved, and this could potentially take this emergency to the next level of crisis, it's okay to go ahead and use your emergency separate and isolate your lockdown system, gain control of that, and keep it from going to that next level, which is a mass casualty incident.
Yep.
One of the things that I wanted to point out is also training. There's a lot of schools that haven't yet invited in all the players. And I'm talking about, if you have a crime scene in the building, you're going to have a lot of people involved at the emergency response level that may have never sat down at a table with you. And they use a system called Incident Command, ICS. It is really important that each building principal has the opportunity to understand what Incident Command looks like, because if they're in their building and a situation takes place and they're running communication from the inside and talking to people on the outside, they need to know who the players are in this emergency.
Yep.
These tabletop exercises are so simple. They don't have to be complex. I encourage schools to make a phone call, put it on the calendar, and have it annually. Have your local police chief, your sheriff, highway patrol, whoever your responders are, and don't forget about that county emergency manager. The people in those roles have such an overview of everything countywide, from weather to hazardous material incidents to things that, as long as they have those people in the circle, should an actual event take place, they're prepared.
Yep.
Again, it doesn't have to be complex. You don't have to have a 2-hour round top. This could happen. Start with something very simple, a 15, 20-minute conversation about who everybody is, and then continue that conversation and complexity as you go on.
Yeah, I would recommend that schools, especially in their quarterly staff meetings, they walk through scenarios. Tabletop.
Yep.
Hey, what are we gonna do if this happens? What should you expect? What should you do with your students? Just have a conversation for 20 minutes once a quarter, and you're going to be so much more prepared than you are today. And if you need help, the team at Safe Defend can certainly provide you scenarios and drills to do
Absolutely.
during that time. So, because we want to see you practice and be better at it. You know, it's funny, when we were kids, we had the nuclear fallout exercises.
Yep.
You get under the desk, and the desk could protect us from a nuclear blast, right?
Yep.
We should probably go back to that because it's kind of fun, and great stories. But you know, active shooter is a real thing. It does happen at schools. It's something we can train for and save lives.
Well, I'm gonna hit this training thing one more time. I think there's 3 levels of training that we really need to focus on. One is the leadership and the admin team, and I talked about that needs to include your building principal, your superintendent, and then your folks from the outside on the emergency response team. And then there needs to be a campus level operations team, which would be your facilities people, your front office staff, and of course your admin team. What I call the campus level operations team are the people that when an event takes place, they're the ones on the phones and the intercoms in the office or out in the building that have eyes on the problem. Their level of training needs to be a notch above potentially what the general staff training needs to be. General staff training really needs to be how to respond to those non-emergency and emergency situations with this set of guidelines, or this is what the outcome needs to be. But they don't necessarily need to understand that complete depth of how to communicate with the outside world and all those things. We can't make it too complicated. But there's definitely 3 levels of training that need to take place. So I reiterate that constantly. And then we can't forget to train the students. Age appropriate training needs to be conducted at the beginning of every year, and again at second semester when they come back, and maybe even after spring break. Students need to understand, if they're separated from a teacher, how they would respond, and again, age appropriate. What are their options? And it's been shown that sharing with students what your plan is during a crisis does not impact an actual planned event. In other words, it acts as a deterrent many times, because the student that's planning an event thinks, wow, they have a system, a plan. I'm not going to be able to do this in the building. It's going to happen somewhere else outside of school grounds.
Well, Dan, this is a great discussion on training and what we should do at our schools. If you need help from Safe Defend, please reach out. We are here for you. Check us out at www.safedefend.com. Dan, as always, it's a privilege to see you, my friend.
I appreciate the opportunity to chat with the folks that are watching. Thank you, Dave.
Have a great weekend.
You bet.